Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Molly, and for this episode, I'd like to welcome Sarah Lethbridge. Sarah is the Pro Dean for External Engagement at Cardiff Business School, responsible for all of the outward-facing activities, such as strategic partnerships, conferences, and events. The work of her team helps their research to have real-world impact. Sarah is also a specialist in continuous improvement, helping organisations to become learning organisations. Thank you so much for joining us, Sarah. So to begin, if it's okay with you, I'd like to ask you some quick-fire questions, just so our listeners can get to know you a bit better. What was the last book that you read?
I read Philippa Perry's The Book You Wish Your Parents Had Read, which was great. Yeah, it's a really interesting book which appeals to the things that I care about around reflection and repeating patterns of the past. So how do you break those patterns when you're a parent and correct all the things that you wish had done differently as you were being brought up?
Sounds like one everyone should listen to. What was the last thing that you learned?
The thing that's popped into my head was something to do with Cardiff University, where I work, and I'm often surprised about departments which are called one thing, but they don't actually look after elements of work that their name would suggest they'd look after.
Yeah.
So I was quite surprised that a team that I thought would be in one department wasn't actually part of that department. So yeah, I'm constantly learning new things about how the organisation works, really, and that's my job, is to understand how organisations work and how to improve them.
What is your greatest strength?
A couple of people have said to me that I'm often the person that says what people are thinking, which could be my greatest downfall at the same time. But yeah, I think I'm quite brave about opinions, and I think because I care about improvement, I'd always rather talk about what needs to change and the problems than not discuss it. And I think that makes me often quite difficult and challenging sometimes in organisational settings. But I'm glad that I'm like it, even if it does get me in hot water sometimes.
Yeah. What motivates you?
I'm very lucky that my mum and dad gave me a really strong work ethic, and I like to finish a day feeling like I've done a good day's work. So that is quite motivational for me, in that I feel like I have to be productive. I have to make sure that it was a good use of time and I've moved forward with whatever I'm working on. So yeah, that motivates me.
And what profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I'd always wanted to be an architect.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was so scared of university. I was like such a homebody that the thought of like 7 years of study.
It is a long one.
But yeah, I still like look at beautiful buildings and think it could have been me, but alas.
Never too late.
Well.
Too late. Thank you for answering those. It's really interesting to know a bit more about you personally. I do have a few more, but I'll come back to them at the end.
Great.
As you are a specialist in continuous learning, it felt very fit that our theme today is just that.
Great.
So what does continuous learning mean to you in the context of leadership, and why is it essential in today's fast-paced world?
I know this sounds very convenient for the purpose of your blog, but I think it's the most important thing about leadership, because when you progress through an organisation's structures, hierarchies, levels, you become ever and ever time poor. And I think the tendency is, as you progress to the top, the tendency, and you are rewarded and you need to make decisions fast. So it can become that you get into a mode of being quite confident about what you know, what the direction needs to be, and that people need to move to that vision. But yet, you can't be an expert in everything as a leader. You have to rely on the expertise of other people elsewhere in the organisation, and that takes listening and that takes learning and to be open to learning things that you don't know. So I think a good leader is someone that really embraces learning and that knows that they haven't got all the answers, even if they're put in positions where those answers are expected of them,
Yeah.
is to actually glean who knows about this, who are the experts in this area, how can I learn from them, I think is one of the most powerful elements of being an amazing leader.
Not all organisations will have a strategy in terms of continuous learning and development, and some might even see it as kind of a tick box exercise rather than an ongoing exercise to benefit their organisation.
Yeah.
So what are some practical strategies that leaders can use to foster a culture of continuous learning within their team or their organisation?
I think one of the most important things to do as a leader is to pursue this practice yourself. And the best ways that I've come across leaders who sort of engage in this repetitive practice of learning are things like weekly blogs or weekly reflections on what's happened, or even just a personal diary to say, this is what I've learnt this week, these are my reflections, and this is what I need to bring forward to the next week. And of course, I care deeply about lean thinking. This is an element of a lean approach too, and we call it a standard management routine. So how are you within your working day carving out, or working week or working month, carving out dedicated time and space to do reflective activity? So if you as a leader do it, then that puts you in a much better position to show your teams how essential it is for the highly well-functioning orientation of that team. So when someone goes on a conference, there's an expectation that they have to process what they learned on that conference and come back and share it with their fellow team members. And there's dedicated time and space to do that. Within a weekly team meet, there could be a dedicated 10 minutes, which is, what have we learnt this week? What went well? What didn't go so well? So I think so much within good organisational practice can be achieved by some of the boring administration of working life.
Yeah.
Just carving out dedicated time and space, a standardised agenda, a standardised approach to help teams to move through this way of thinking about the work that they do and how they can get better at doing that work.
Leading by example.
Absolutely.
And having the trickle-down effect.
Yeah.
So as organisations strive to adapt to these rapidly changing environments, leaders are increasingly turning to coaching and mentoring as an essential tool for cultivating talent and fostering innovation. In your opinion, what role does coaching and mentoring play in supporting continuous learning initiatives within the leadership context?
It's absolutely fundamental. I'm now part of our business school management board, which I hadn't really realised was one of the advantages of being part of management board, was that you get access to an executive coach. And it's really helped me to work through the way that I am in different situations. It's helped me to be better prepared about certain situations. And the whole coaching process is actually a process of continuous improvement. So the bedrock of lean is plan, do, check, or some people say study, act. So plan, what you're going to do, critically do it. Check, did it do what you thought it was going to do? And that check part is the thing that often gets forgotten about in organisations. They're too busy, they haven't got the time, they've moved on, it's the next crisis. But the check is actually the learning. And then the act is, once you've learnt something new, what do you put in place as a consequence of that learning? So coaching for me is the act of doing that on an individual basis. It's you talking through what's happened, what you do differently next time, how you could approach things. And to get that as a leader, it's tremendously important to make you a more sensitive, thoughtful, emotionally empathetic leader. I think it's absolutely critical. And it's the best way to develop teams. So, you know, again, going to lean, Stephen Spear and Bowen wrote an article about decoding the DNA of the Toyota production system. And their fourth rule within that way of being an amazing organisation is that all activity must take place under the guidance of a coach or a leader at the lowest level of the organisation, using the Socratic method. So trying to uncover help the employee to uncover what is actually going on, and so that they can take that learning for the next time. So there's something around these brilliant organisations which is about developing people, carving out time and space to understand what's happened, to take the learning from what's happened, and then critically to put that learning into practice. And that needs to happen at every level. And again, if the leader isn't doing it, why would you expect everyone else to practice these things? So I'm a major fan of coaching, and that the ability as a human to constantly think and reflect so that you can be better. Otherwise, what's the point?
My final question is, what advice would you give to aspiring leaders who want to embrace continuous learning as a core aspect of their leadership journey?
My advice is that it is hard, and there's a pressure that goes along with caring about this sort of stuff. There's an expectation that you have to be open, and lots of people don't like being open, and they would rather present something because that's a shield, it's a defence. When what we're trying to create within these sort of really positive organisational learning cultures is an authenticity and an awareness that we make mistakes and that things go wrong and that there are problems, and the only way that we can really ever learn is if we're open about those things. So I think the advice I'd give is, you have to be serious about it, you have to be authentic about this, otherwise it won't work and it will be disingenuous. And the author that I love, Amy Edmondson, who talks about psychological safety. I think it's critically important in organisations that she's proven with her research that the most highly performing organisations have psychologically safe environments, and leaders set the tone for that psychological safety. So I think it's be aware of the responsibility of it, how open and authentic you'll need to be as a leader, but also how much amazing benefits can be gleaned from creating organisations that actually operate in this way.
Well, thank you so much for all of your ideas and advice today. Just before we end, I'd like to ask you a few more quick fire questions, if that's okay. Do you or have you ever played a musical instrument?
I have the flute.
Oh, do you still?
I do now, actually, because my daughter is learning the flute as well, because I thought I didn't have to pay for another instrument. Sometimes I just, show her how it's done, but she's actually getting very good at it. So she'll soon overtake me.
What is your favourite type of food?
I love Thai food. I love Thai food.
Yeah, that's a brilliant shout.
Yeah.
What is your favourite noise?
At the moment, it's Taylor Swift, because I'm obsessed.
The new album?
Yes.
Yep.
And I love it when she's at her most depressed as well. And she's angry on this one as well, which is good.
Great work comes out of anger.
Yeah.
Are you a morning person or a night owl?
I think I'm pretty morning-y, which is irritating. But yeah, I am. I do get up early.
Do you think you've always been a morning person?
Yeah, I think so. Cramming, Why be prepared when you can just get up at 5 and get it all done before you go?
And my last question is, if you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Oh, crumbs. Superpower. I'd like to stop cancer, because it seems to be the absolute git that ruins everything and takes everyone away. So yeah, if we can get rid of that one, that would be really appreciated.
Yeah, that's a good one to use. Again, thank you so much for joining us, Sarah. I hope you've enjoyed the experience.
Yeah, loved it. Thank you.
Mae ein podlediad sgyrsiau ar arweinyddiaeth ar gael trwy ein gwefan. Mae'r hawlfraint y podlediad yma yn cael ei gadw gan Llywodraeth Cymru. Our Conversations on Leadership podcast is available through our website. Copyright of this podcast is held by the Welsh Government.